The great crystal chamber hummed with energy as the Zephyrian High Command gathered for their weekly war council. Commander Vextar stood before the massive holographic display, his forearms moving gracefully as he manipulated the star charts floating in the air. The other commanders sat in their floating chairs, their scaled faces showing the boredom that came from centuries of easy victories. "We have a new species to discuss," Vextar announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. The hologram shifted to show a small yellow star, with several planets orbiting around it. "They call themselves humans. They come from the third planet in this system, which they name Earth." General Zixara leaned forward, her silver eyes gleaming with mild interest. "How primitive are they? Do they even have space travel yet?" "They do," Vextar replied, zooming in on the solar system. "But their technology is laughably basic. They use simple fusion drives for propulsion. Their weapons are mostly kinetic projectiles fired from crude railguns. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, and certainly no hyperspace capability beyond short jumps within their own system." The other commanders exchanged amused glances. They had seen thousands of species like this before. Young races that barely understood the basics of interstellar warfare. Most surrendered after seeing a single Zephyrian battleship. Those that fought usually lasted less than an hour. "What is their military strength?" asked Admiral Thelos, already knowing the answer would be pathetic. Vextar brought up tactical displays showing human ships and stations. "They have approximately 200 vessels, most of them converted cargo ships. Their largest warship displaces less than 1,000,000 tons. They have established some defensive platforms around their homeworld and mining colonies on several asteroids." The commanders laughed. Admiral Thelos shook his head in disbelief. 1,000,000 tons? Our fighter craft are larger than their battleships. This is not even worth calling a proper military action." "Indeed," agreed General Zixara. "Send a single destroyer. These humans will surrender the moment they see it drop out of hyperspace." But Commander Vextar held up one of his hands. "There is something else. Our intelligence reports indicate that humans have been expanding aggressively. In just 50 of their years, they have established permanent colonies on 12 worlds. They strip mine asteroids at an unprecedented rate. Their population grows faster than any species we have encountered. So they breed like insects," scoffed Admiral Thelos. "All the more reason to exterminate them quickly before they spread further." Supreme General Korthan, who had been silent until now, spoke from his position at the head of the council table. His voice carried the authority of someone who had conquered 100 star systems. "The humans present no immediate threat, but their rapid expansion is concerning. We have learned from past mistakes. Better to crush them now while they are weak than to allow them to develop into a problem." The other commanders nodded in agreement. They remembered the Altarian situation from 3 centuries ago. What started as a minor pest had grown into a 10-year war before the Zephyrians finally achieved victory. The lesson was clear. Eliminate threats before they became actual threats. "What do you propose?" asked General Zixara. Supreme General Korthan stood, his massive frame casting shadows across the crystal walls. "We will send Strike Force Talon to deal with this matter. 12 of our finest fighter pilots should be more than sufficient to destroy their homeworld and scatter their colonies. It will serve as a demonstration to any other primitive species in the region." Vextar called up personnel files on the hologram. Strike Force Talon is currently commanded by Squadron Leader Kethran. His record is impressive. 47 confirmed kills, veteran of the Nexus campaign. Expert in deep space operations. Generally. Quote, "Perfect," said the Supreme General. "Kethran and his pilots will make quick work of these humans." "How long for the operation?" "Travel time is approximately 10 standard days each way," Vextar calculated. "The actual engagement should take no more than a few hours. Total mission time: 3 weeks. Admiral Thelos was already thinking about the next item on their agenda. "Excellent. Order Strike Force Talon to eliminate all human military assets and infrastructure. Leave their homeworld intact but uninhabitable. We may wish to colonize it ourselves once the vermin are cleared away." The orders were transmitted immediately. Throughout the massive Zephyrian fleet, Strike Force Talon received their mission briefings. 12 elite pilots began preparing their ships for another routine extermination mission. They had done this dozens of times before against dozens of different species. Squadron leader Kethran reviewed the intelligence reports while his ground crew performed final checks on his fighter. The humans seemed typical of most primitive species. Aggressive expansion, crude technology, and probably no real understanding of what they were about to face. Kethran had been fighting for the Zephyrian Empire for 30 years. He had seen species that fired chemical projectiles at his ship. He had fought against enemies who used nuclear weapons in space combat. He had even faced opponents who tried to ram his fighter with their own ships in desperate kamikaze attacks. None of it had ever worked. Zephyrian technology was simply too advanced. Their fighters could travel faster than light, turn invisible to most sensors, and fire plasma weapons that could destroy asteroids. What could a species with fusion drives and kinetic weapons possibly do against such superiority? As Strike Force Talon prepared to depart, none of the pilots felt any concern about their mission. They had faced far more dangerous enemies than humans. Their ships were loaded with standard ammunition. They carried enough supplies for a quick strike and return journey. This would be just another easy victory to add to their records. The 12 fighters launched from the main fleet and jumped into hyperspace, heading toward the small yellow star where humanity waited. The High Command had already moved on to other business. In their minds, the human problem was solved. In 3 weeks, they would receive a report confirming the successful completion of another minor pest control operation. None of them suspected that they had just made the greatest tactical error in Zephyrian history. None of them realized that Strike Force Talon was flying toward something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. 10 days after leaving the Zephyrian fleet, Strike Force Talon dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. Squadron leader Kethran felt the familiar sensation of his ship returning to normal space as the stars snapped back into their proper positions. Around him, 11 other fighters completed the same transition, their advanced cloaking systems immediately activating. All units, report status, Kethran commanded through the secure communication channel. One by one, his pilots confirmed their ships were operating normally. Their cloaking devices were working perfectly, making them invisible to any primitive sensors the humans might possess. Their weapons were charged and ready. This would be a simple mission. Kethran activated his long-range scanners and began studying the human solar system. The intelligence reports had been accurate about the basic layout: 1 yellow star, 8 planets, and several large asteroid belts. The third planet from the Sun was Earth, the human homeworld. But as the scanners collected more detailed information, Kethran began to notice things that did not match the intelligence briefings. The asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets was not natural. It had been extensively modified, with clearly artificial structures scattered throughout. Mining operations, obviously, but on a scale that seemed excessive for such a primitive species. Squad leader called out Lieutenant Vex IM, one of his most experienced pilots. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the system. There are far more installations than the intelligence reports suggested. Kethran switched to a different scanner mode and felt his first stirring of unease. The humans had built something in practically every region of their solar system. Orbital platforms surrounded not just their homeworld, but every major planet. The asteroid belt was filled with mining stations, manufacturing facilities, and what appeared to be massive construction yards. How long ago were these intelligence reports compiled? Asked Lieutenant Zareth. Kethran checked his mission files. 18 months ago. Standard reconnaissance protocols. That explained some of the discrepancies. 18 months was enough time for a species to expand their operations, especially one that bred and built as quickly as humans reportedly did. But the scale of construction was still impressive for such a short time frame. Beginning close approach to the homeworld, Kethran announced. Maintain cloak and stay in formation. We'll conduct a detailed reconnaissance before beginning our attack. The 12 fighters moved deeper into the solar system, their sensors recording everything they encountered. What they found continued to puzzle Kethran. The humans had not just built defensively around their homeworld. They had fortified everything. Mining stations in the asteroid belt had defensive weapons. Construction yards were surrounded by automated gun platforms. Even the research stations orbiting the outer planets showed signs of military preparation. Most strange of all, the humans appeared to have weapons scattered throughout empty space. Kethran's scanners kept detecting energy sources in areas where his visual displays showed nothing at all. Either the humans had developed cloaking technology themselves, or they had found ways to hide military assets that his scanners could barely detect. "Squad leader, this doesn't feel right," transmitted Lieutenant Vex IM. "These humans have been preparing for something. This level of fortification takes years to complete, not months." Kethran agreed, but he kept his doubts to himself. The mission was clear. Destroy human military capabilities and infrastructure. The fact that they had built more than expected just meant more targets to eliminate. As Strike Force Talon approached the inner planets, Kethran got his first clear look at Earth itself. The planet was surrounded by a complex network of orbital defenses, space stations, weapons platforms, and what appeared to be shield generators created multiple layers of protection. The human fleet was positioned in strategic formations throughout the orbital space. But again, something felt wrong about what he was seeing. The human ships were positioned in patterns that seemed designed to channel attackers into specific approach corridors. Their defensive platforms were arranged not just to protect Earth, but to create overlapping fields of fire that would catch enemies in crossfire situations. Most concerning of all, the humans had positioned their major fleet assets in locations that provided them with excellent sensor coverage of the entire system. If Strike Force Talon had not possessed the most advanced cloaking technology in the galaxy, they would have been detected the moment they dropped out of hyperspace. "These humans fight like they've been at war for generations," observed Lieutenant Zareth. "Look at their formations. Look at how they've positioned their assets. This isn't the work of a peaceful species that just learned about interstellar threats." Kethran had reached the same conclusion. Everything about the human solar system suggested a species that understood warfare on an instinctive level. They had not just built defenses, they had built a trap. Multiple traps, actually, designed to catch enemies approaching from any direction. "Perhaps they have been fighting among themselves," suggested Lieutenant Morthak. "Internal conflicts would explain their military sophistication." "Maybe," Kethran replied. But he was not convinced. Species that fought only internal wars typically built defenses designed to protect their homeworld from surface attacks. The humans had built defenses designed to catch and destroy space-based threats approaching from interstellar distances. That suggested they were expecting visitors like the Zephyrians. As the squadron moved closer to Earth, Kethran began to notice another disturbing pattern. The humans had positioned automated sensor platforms throughout their system in configurations that would detect approaching ships regardless of their entry vector. Worse, these sensors appeared to be networked together in ways that would make it impossible to eliminate them without alerting the entire system. "Squad leader," transmitted Lieutenant Vex IM. "I'm reading massive energy buildups throughout the system. Whatever the humans have built, they're powering it up." Kethran's tactical displays confirmed the observation. Energy readings were spiking across dozens of installations. The humans were activating something, but their cloaking made it impossible to determine exactly what. Despite his growing unease, Kethran continued with the mission. Strike Force Talon was the elite of the elite. They had faced sophisticated defenses before. Even if the humans proved more capable than expected, 12 Zephyrian fighters should be more than enough to complete their objectives. "All units, prepare for attack," Kethran commanded. "We'll begin with the orbital defense platforms and work our way inward. Standard elimination protocol. Stay cloaked as long as possible and strike without warning." But as Strike Force Talon moved into final attack position, Kethran could not shake the feeling that something fundamental was wrong with this situation. The humans had not just built defenses, they had built the kind of defenses that suggested they knew exactly what kind of enemy they would be facing. It was almost as if they had been expecting the Zephyrians to come. Squadron leader Kethran selected his first target, a large defensive platform orbiting Earth at a distance of 50,000 kilometers. The structure appeared to be a standard weapons array, similar to defensive installations the Zephyrians had encountered and destroyed countless times before. He aimed his plasma cannons and prepared to decloak for the killing shot. "All units, Begin attack sequence, he transmitted. Target the orbital platforms first, then move to the fleet assets. Remember, we want to disable their ability to fight back quickly. The moment Strikeforce Talon dropped their cloaking and opened fire, the entire human solar system erupted into chaos. Kethran's first plasma blast struck the defensive platform exactly where he had aimed, but instead of the devastating explosion he expected, the platform's shields absorbed the impact and immediately returned fire. Not with the primitive kinetic weapons mentioned in the intelligence reports, but with coherent energy beams that nearly punched through his fighter's defensive screens. "What the hell was that?" transmitted Lieutenant Vex IM, his voice tight with surprise. "These humans have plasma weapons." Before Kethran could respond, the empty space around Strikeforce Talon suddenly filled with weapons fire. The humans had not just hidden sensor platforms throughout their system, they had hidden weapons platforms, hundreds of them. What the Zephyrian scanners had detected as empty space was actually a vast network of cloaked gun platforms, all of which activated the moment the attack began. "Evasive maneuvers," Kethran shouted, throwing his fighter into a spinning dive as energy beams crisscrossed the space around him. How did they hide so many weapons? Our sensors should have detected them. The answer became clear as the battle developed. The humans had not just hidden their weapons platforms. They had built them using principles that made them nearly invisible to Zephyrian scanning technology. Somehow, impossibly, a primitive species had developed stealth capabilities that rivaled the Zephyrians' own cloaking systems. Lieutenant Zareth screamed across the communication channel as his fighter took multiple hits. "My shields are failing. These aren't primitive weapons. They're firing some kind of accelerated projectiles at relativistic speeds." Kethran's tactical display confirmed the nightmare. The humans were using railgun technology, but they had scaled it up to levels that defied belief. Instead of small kinetic projectiles, they were firing chunks of metal accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. When those projectiles struck, they hit with the force of nuclear weapons. "Form up on me," Kethran ordered, trying to rally his scattered squadron. "We need to concentrate our firepower and break through their defenses." But the humans had other plans. As Strikeforce Talon attempted to regroup, the human fleet moved into action. Their ships were indeed smaller than Zephyrian vessels, but they moved with a coordination that spoke of extensive training and preparation. More troubling, they were not trying to engage the Zephyrian fighters directly. Instead, they were herding them. "Squad leader," transmitted Lieutenant Morthak. "They're driving us toward the asteroid belt. I think this is some kind of trap." Kethran realized his pilot was correct. The human ships were not fighting to win individual engagements. They were fighting to force Strikeforce Talon into a specific location. Every time the Zephyrian fighters tried to break away from the planet, human ships appeared to block their escape routes. Every time they tried to engage the human fleet directly, hidden weapons platforms opened fire and forced them to retreat. The asteroid belt was getting closer, and Kethran's long-range scanners were detecting massive energy buildups throughout the rocky debris field. Whatever the humans had built in there, they were preparing to use it. "All units, maximum acceleration," Kethran commanded. "We need to break free of their formation and get some maneuvering room." But as Strikeforce Talon pushed their engines to maximum power, they discovered another horrifying truth. The humans had somehow learned how Zephyrian fighters operated. Their weapons fire was not random or desperate. They were targeting specific systems on the Zephyrian ships with surgical precision. Lieutenant Vex IM's fighter suddenly lost power to its main engines. "They hit my reactor coupling," he reported. "How did they know where to aim? This is impossible." The answer came when Kethran intercepted a human military transmission. The language was alien, but his ship's computer provided a translation that made his blood freeze. "Target the reactor coupling between the third and fourth hull sections. Intelligence reports indicate that's their primary weakness." Intelligence reports. The humans had intelligence reports on Zephyrian technology. Somehow, a species that supposedly had no contact with galactic civilization possessed detailed technical knowledge of Zephyrian fighter design. "Squad leader," transmitted Lieutenant Zareth, his voice filled with growing panic. "I'm reading massive incoming projectiles from the asteroid belt. Whatever they built in there, they just fired it at us. Kethron's sensors confirmed the detection. Dozens of large objects were accelerating out of the asteroid belt, toward Strikeforce Talon's position. But these were not conventional missiles or projectiles. They were chunks of asteroids that had been equipped with guidance systems and fusion rockets. The humans had turned random space debris into weapons of massive destruction. Scatter formation, Kethran ordered. Don't let them catch us grouped together. The Zephyrian fighters split apart just as the first asteroid weapon reached their position. The explosion was visible from Earth. The humans had packed their improvised missiles with enough nuclear explosives to vaporize anything within a 1,000-kilometer radius. But the attack was not over. As Strikeforce Talon attempted to regroup after avoiding the asteroid bombardment, the human fleet moved in for close combat. Their ships were still smaller and slower than Zephyrian fighters, but their pilots displayed a level of tactical sophistication that defied explanation. "These pilots are insane," transmitted Lieutenant Morthak as a human ship deliberately rammed itself into his fighter's shields. "They're using kamikaze attacks." "Who does that?" Kethran was beginning to understand. The humans were not fighting like a civilized species trying to defend their territory. They were fighting like predators who had evolved in an environment where only the most aggressive and adaptable survived. They were willing to sacrifice individual ships and pilots if it meant damaging or destroying their enemies. As the battle continued, Kethran watched his squadron take losses that should have been impossible. These were not primitive enemies with crude technology. These were apex predators who had somehow acquired advanced weapons and learned to use them with devastating effectiveness. Worst of all, the humans appeared to be learning from the engagement in real time. Their tactics improved as the battle progressed. Their weapons fire became more accurate. Their coordination became tighter. It was as if they were treating the entire battle as a training exercise designed to teach them how to fight Zephyrian ships. "Squad leader," transmitted Lieutenant Vex I am, his voice filled with desperation. "We need to withdraw. This is not what we were prepared for. These humans are not primitive." Kethran knew his pilot was correct, but withdrawal was no longer an option. The humans had surrounded Strikeforce Talon with a web of ships, weapons platforms, and orbital defenses that made escape impossible. They had walked into a trap, and the trap was closing around them. Squadron leader Kethran watched in horror as Lieutenant Zareth's fighter was disabled by a precisely aimed human plasma beam. The shot had not destroyed the ship but had targeted its life support systems with surgical accuracy. Within seconds, human recovery vessels were moving toward the crippled fighter. "They're not trying to kill us," Kethran realized with growing terror. "They're trying to capture us alive." The battle had been raging for 2 hours, and Strikeforce Talon had lost half its number. But the pattern was becoming clear. The humans were using weapons designed to disable rather than destroy. Every time a Zephyrian fighter was crippled, human ships immediately moved to capture the vessel and its pilot. "Squad leader." Transmitted Lieutenant Vex I am. Zareth is transmitting on emergency frequencies. "The humans have him." Kethran switched to the emergency channel and heard his pilot's panicked voice. "They're studying everything. They're taking apart my ship while I watch. They're copying our technology." "Squad leader, they knew about our weak points because they've captured other ships. This isn't their first time fighting our people." The transmission cut to static as the humans presumably jammed the signal. But the damage was done. Kethran now understood the horrible truth. The humans had been capturing Zephyrian technology for years, probably from diplomatic missions or scout ships that had disappeared without explanation. That was how they knew where to target Zephyrian vessels. That was how they had developed countermeasures for Zephyrian cloaking technology. "All remaining units," Kethran commanded, his voice steady despite his growing desperation. "We cannot allow ourselves to be captured. If we cannot escape, we must activate self-destruct protocols." But even that option was being denied to them. As Lieutenant Morthak attempted to arm his ship's self-destruct system, nothing happened. His fighter's computer systems had been compromised by some kind of human electronic warfare attack. "My systems aren't responding," Morthak reported. "They're using some kind of jamming technology that's interfering with our computers." Kethran tried his own self-destruct system and got the same result. The humans had developed ways to prevent Zephyrian ships from destroying themselves. They wanted the technology intact, along with the pilots who knew how to operate it. The remaining fighters of Strike Force Talon found themselves being systematically herded into a section of space near one of the larger human space stations. The humans were not just winning the battle, they were controlling every aspect of it. Their ships moved with a coordination that suggested they had practiced this exact scenario dozens of times. "Squad leader," transmitted Lieutenant Vex. "I am," his voice tight with fear. "I'm reading massive structural reinforcement around that space station. It's not a normal installation. It's specifically designed to hold captured ships." The space station was indeed unusual. As Kethran's sensors examined it more closely, he could see that it had been constructed with multiple docking bays designed to accommodate alien spacecraft. More disturbing, he could see other ships already docked there. Ships that looked familiar. "By the void," whispered Lieutenant Morthak. "Those are Zephyrian vessels. Different classes, but definitely our technology. How many of our people have they captured?" The answer came when Kethran's communication system received a transmission from the human station. The voice that spoke was Zephyrian, but the words were in perfect human language. "Attention Zephyrian fighters. This is Commander Yelthar, of the captured vessel Starbreaker. I am transmitting under human supervision. You cannot win this battle. Surrender now, and your lives will be spared." Kethran recognized the name. Commander Yelthar had been leading a diplomatic mission to this sector 3 years ago. His ship had been reported as lost to navigational error. Now, it appeared he had been captured by the humans and was being used to help them understand Zephyrian technology. The humans have been planning this for years, Kethran realized. Every diplomatic contact, every lost ship, every missing patrol has been feeding them information about us. The tactical situation continued to deteriorate. Lieutenant Vex IAM's fighter was disabled by a precisely coordinated attack from multiple human ships. Lieutenant Morthak attempted to ram a human vessel, but his fighter's engines failed at the crucial moment. The humans had learned to counter even kamikaze attacks. One by one, the remaining members of Strike Force Talon were captured. Their ships were disabled with surgical precision and towed to the human capture facility. Kethran found himself alone, surrounded by dozens of human vessels, all targeting his fighter with weapons designed to disable rather than destroy. "Zephyrian fighter," came a transmission in accented but understandable Zephyrian language. "This is Admiral Chen of the Human Defense Force. You have fought bravely, but this battle is over. Power down your weapons and prepare to be taken aboard our facility. You will not be harmed if you cooperate." Kethran considered his options. His ship was damaged, his weapons were nearly depleted, and his squadron had been completely captured. But surrender meant giving the humans access to his knowledge and his ship's advanced systems. "I know what you're thinking," Admiral Chen continued. "You're wondering how we learned your language, how we knew your tactics, how we developed countermeasures for your technology. The answer is simple. We learned from every Zephyrian ship that has entered our space over the past 5 years." The transmission paused, then continued with a tone that chilled Kethran to his core. "We are not a primitive species. Squadron Leader Kethran, we are a species that has been at war for our entire evolutionary history. When we discovered that hostile aliens were sending ships into our space, we did what humans do best. We prepared for war. Every diplomatic mission you sent us was a learning opportunity. Every scout ship that disappeared taught us something new about your capabilities. Every piece of technology we captured was reverse-engineered and improved upon. You came here expecting to find prey. Instead, you found predators who have been studying you for years." Kethran's instruments detected multiple targeting locks on his ship. The humans had him completely surrounded. But they were not firing. They were waiting for his decision. "You have 1 minute to decide," Admiral Chen transmitted. "Surrender and live to see what humans can accomplish with Zephyrian technology. Or force us to disable your ship and capture you anyway. The choice is yours." but the outcome will be the same. Kethrin looked at his tactical display and saw the truth of the situation. The humans had not just won this battle. They had been winning a war that the Zephyrians never realized they were fighting. Every contact between the two species had been a victory for humanity, teaching them more about their enemies while revealing nothing about themselves. As his minute ran out, Kethran powered down his weapons and waited for the humans to claim their final prize. The Zephyrian High Command gathered in their crystal chamber 3 weeks after Strikeforce Talon had departed for the human system. Commander Vextar stood before the holographic display, but this time, his forearms hung motionless at his sides. The star charts showed nothing but empty space where Strikeforce Talon should have been transmitting their mission reports. "Still no contact?" asked General Zixara, though she already knew the answer. "Nothing," Vextar replied, his voice hollow. "No transmissions, no emergency beacons, no automated status reports. It's as if 12 of our finest fighters simply vanished." Supreme General Corthan leaned forward in his chair, his massive frame tense with concern. "Equipment malfunction? Navigational error? Impossible," said Admiral Thelos. "Strikeforce Talon was equipped with the most advanced technology in our fleet. Multiple backup systems, redundant navigation computers, emergency transmission capabilities. Even if every ship suffered complete system failure simultaneously, we should have received some kind of signal." The silence stretched across the chamber. In 3 centuries of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire had never lost an entire squadron without explanation. Individual ships might be destroyed by lucky shots or unfortunate accidents, but 12 elite fighters disappearing without trace was unprecedented. "Perhaps the humans proved more capable than our intelligence suggested," ventured General Zixara. "But even if they managed to destroy our fighters, we should have detected the energy signatures of the battle from our long-range monitoring stations." Vexistar manipulated the holographic display to show sensor data from the region around the human solar system. "That's what troubles me most. Our deep space sensors detected massive energy buildups 3 weeks ago, consistent with large-scale combat operations. But then, everything went quiet. No continued fighting, no explosions, no debris fields, just silence." The implications hung heavy in the air. If the humans had somehow managed to defeat Strikeforce Talon, they had done it so thoroughly that no evidence of the battle remained. That suggested a level of military capability that contradicted every intelligence assessment. "We need to send a reconnaissance force," declared Admiral Thelos. "A full battle group with heavy cruisers and destroyer escorts. We need to know what happened to our people." But Supreme General Corthan shook his massive head. "No, not yet. If the humans have developed capabilities we don't understand, sending another force blindly could result in even greater losses." The debate continued for hours. Some commanders argued for immediate retaliation. Others called for caution. But as the days passed with no word from Strikeforce Talon, even the most aggressive voices began to express doubt about engaging the humans directly. 2 months after the scheduled return of Strikeforce Talon, the Zephyrian Empire received their first communication from the human solar system. It was not what anyone expected. The message beacon was detected by a routine patrol at the edge of Zephyrian space. It was clearly of human origin, but it had been left in a position where Zephyrian ships would inevitably find it. The beacon activated when approached and transmitted a single data package before self-destructing. Commander Vextar played the message for the assembled High Command. What they saw defied their understanding of the situation. The transmission showed human engineers working on clearly Zephyrian technology, but they were not struggling to understand alien systems. They were improving them. Modified Zephyrian fighters hung in human construction bays, their hulls reinforced with human materials, their weapon systems upgraded with human technology. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Thelos. "Those modifications would require decades of research to develop." But the recording continued, showing human pilots flying captured Zephyrian fighters with obvious skill and confidence. The humans had not just acquired Zephyrian technology. They had mastered it completely and made it better. The most disturbing section of the recording showed human scientists studying captured Zephyrian crew members. not torturing them, but learning from them. The prisoners appeared to be alive and unharmed, but they were clearly cooperating with their captors. Somehow, the humans had convinced elite Zephyrian pilots to share their knowledge willingly. As the recording neared its end, a human figure appeared on screen. Admiral Chen, according to the text that appeared below his image, spoke directly to the camera in perfect Zephyrian. "To the Zephyrian High Command," he said, his voice calm and professional. "We thank you for sending us such excellent teachers. Squadron leader Kethran and his pilots have provided invaluable insights into Zephyrian military doctrine, technology, and strategic thinking." The human admiral gestured toward something off-screen, and the camera panned to show a massive construction facility. Hundreds of ships were under construction, but these were not human designs. They were clearly based on Zephyrian technology, but modified and improved in ways that made them barely recognizable. "You sent Strike Force Talon to destroy us," Admiral Chen continued. "Instead, you have given us everything we needed to become a threat to your empire. We now understand your technology, your tactics, and your weaknesses. More importantly, we understand your psychology." The recording showed more captured Zephyrian vessels, more human pilots training on alien fighters, more scientists studying alien technology. The scale of the operation was staggering. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a machine designed to absorb and improve upon Zephyrian capabilities. "We know you are watching this transmission," Admiral Chen said, looking directly into the camera. "We know you are trying to decide whether to send more ships or to leave us alone. Let me save you the trouble of that decision." The camera switched to show Earth's orbital space, but it was completely transformed. Where once there had been primitive human installations, now there were massive shipyards building vessels that combined the best of human and Zephyrian technology. The defensive platforms had been replaced with weapons that could threaten capital ships. The asteroid belt had been turned into a fortress that could defend against entire fleets. "We are no longer the primitive species you thought you could easily exterminate," Admiral Chen concluded. "We are humanity. We learn, we adapt, we improve. And now we know exactly where your empire is located." The transmission ended with a single line of text in Zephyrian script. "We'll be in touch." In the crystal chamber, the Zephyrian High Command sat in stunned silence. They had sent their finest fighters to eliminate a minor pest. Instead, they had created their own worst nightmare. "What have we done?" whispered General Zixara. Supreme General Korthon stood slowly, his face grave with the weight of realization. "We have given the most dangerous predator species in the galaxy everything they needed to hunt us." The beacon's self-destruct had eliminated any chance of studying human technology or tracking the transmission back to its source. The humans had made their point and vanished back into the silence of their solar system, leaving the Zephyrian Empire to contemplate a terrifying new reality. Somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity was building ships, training pilots, and preparing for a war that the Zephyrians had accidentally started, but were no longer certain they could win. Strike Force Talon had been sent to deliver a message of Zephyrian supremacy. Instead, they had become the foundation of humanity's transformation from prey to predator. None of them had returned home to tell the tale, but their fate would echo through the galaxy for generations to come.